Hi, it's Kirk. Welcome to the A.D.K Rock and Metal channel. And today I am joined by one of my favourite contemporary English bands. I think we would call you a post-metal band. Would you agree on that, guys?
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm talking about Gozer, a trio that have just released a new EP called The Path Always Leads to the End. That came out 2 weeks ago, and it follows up on your 2022 debut, An Endless Static, which received rave reviews across the board. And we had it at Screen Blast Repeat, who I also write for. We had that in our top 7 debut albums of 2022. So enough about doing this long introduction. One more thing I will say, we're joined by TJ Fairfax, the drummer, and Craig Bagshaw, who's also the guitarist. Both of you perform vocals. Before we talk about the new EP, let's talk about your fondest memories from this co-headlining tour you did with the Bristol extreme sludge post-metal band Torpor back in May. You played 5 dates.
Favorite moment.
Yeah.
It was a really good tour.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Loads of fun. So it's really hard to actually sort of
Just
pick out. I definitely have like favorite parts of the tour that I'd put it in categories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was like a best gig and like best accommodation and all that kind of stuff. I don't really know, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um,
It's kind of hard to just pick one best moment. Like,
I think for me,
well, for me, I'm gonna just say when Simon showed up with his drums, they were perfect. Like, he had a 13-inch rack tom, 18-inch floor tom, 24-inch kick, and that's exactly what I play in my band space. Yeah. So like, I was just like, for me, I was like, yeah, that's good. Like, and it just sounded amazing. So being able to play that kit and it sounded incredible every single night, I'd probably say that was a big highlight of that tour. And then of course them just guys being such lovely people. Like,
I definitely think that like over the whole tour, like when we were hanging out at your house in Sheffield and we had like the fire going.
Oh yeah, that was nice.
Like, that was really nice. Like we had an opportunity to really bond then. And I feel like we had an opportunity to sort of like form really close. We were already like friends and we already knew each other and everything like that, but that was really an opportunity for us to like form a really close friendship. And it was just really nice.
That was actually really nice. Yeah. Just chilling in a fire, like next to a fire pit, and was all just having a drink and like a bit of a laugh, and that was nice. Yeah,
because the gigs were great. All the gigs were great and everything like that. But I think the highlight for me was just being able to like hang out.
Just hang out with them. Yeah,
don't get to do often.
Because I'm just looking at the venues. So you played Bristol, London, Nottingham, Sheffield, inevitably, and you ended in Manchester. That was the first time Torpor had ever played in Manchester.
Yeah,
I was so surprised.
That surprised me as well. Yeah, we were really surprised that they'd not played before.
Because we'd even played Manchester like a couple of times in the past.
Yeah.
I think we played Star and Garter a couple of times, I know that much.
Yeah.
And we played Gorilla at Revolution Festival.
There was another venue as well we played with, like a pub.
The Bread Shed, was it?
It was over the road from Gorilla.
Yeah, it was like Thursday Nights Alive.
God, that's bad, isn't it? I can't remember. That was a while ago, to be fair.
A long time ago. I had a terrible memory.
Yeah, it's pushing nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah.
So can I ask a question about the gig that you played with Din of Celestial Birds, co-headlining show, 8th of October in Sheffield?
Yeah.
You hinted that that's likely to be your last live performance for some time. Why is that?
We just wanted to focus on writing new stuff, and we found in the past when we've got too many gigs, even if it's like one every like month or something like that, it slows us down. It's a bit like a speed bump in the writing because we'll be writing and getting really into it, and then we're like, oh right, let's practice for this gig, and then we play that gig, and then the following week it's like the momentum we've built for writing stuff it just slows down a bit. So we've said we wanted to have that break. Also, I've set up a new business this year, and so has the bass player. He's set up two. Yeah, he's set up 2 as well. So we kind of it made sense for us to go, right, we'll have sort of 5-6 months not playing shows, just to kind of like calm down and just figure out writing new stuff and not stress ourselves out too much, pretty much.
Because it's quite difficult. You've got such full-on jobs, and like you're trying to work around being musicians with those full-time jobs, and especially all three of us at this particular. It's quite pivotal moments in our careers.
Yeah.
Like for various different reasons, and so there's a lot of that kind of comes into play, and just allowing yourself the space in order to be able to like actually focus on writing music rather than having to practice for gigs all the time and do that kind of stuff and exist in that space for a bit.
Right, so, were you originally in that post black metal band Ball? Were you a member of that band? Yeah.
Yeah, when we at the very beginnings of Ball, like before they'd even released anything, before they were like a post black metal band, it was like something that basically Stefan Venom came to me asking to like do stuff, and then it eventually kind of like became a band, but it started going in a bit of a direction that I didn't want to go in, and so I ended up leaving for those reasons. But it was quite short-lived, but I'm glad to have been part of the inception of that band. It was like knowing the band that they are today and having been on tour with them. They're really good guys, especially like I've got a really strong friendship specifically with most of the members of the band, and through meeting other members of the band who have joined, formed really close friendships with them as well. So I think we both have really.
Yeah.
Sharing a practice space with them for years.
Yeah. Like, we shared a space with those guys for 2.5, nearly 3 years.
Yeah. So we've always been quite close as well.
Yeah. And again, they're really lovely guys. So.
Yeah, that giant bassist. The bassist Richard Spencer, he plays violin, doesn't he, as well?
Yeah, the viola, yeah, we got into do like a little guesty on a couple of songs and on this EP as well, actually.
We've had him play live with us a couple of times, which is really fun.
Yeah, I remember speaking to him when I saw you at Stevenage. I did a bit of an interview with him. He's like 6'7", that guy, isn't he? He's really tall.
He's a giant, yeah. I mean, I'm 6'3" and he towers over me. So.
Yeah. So we talked off camera about this, Craig. When I saw you at the Red Lion in Stevenage on your co-headlining tour with Ball, this is before An Endless Static came out, and you had that single Crown Eater. I think that's the one thing you had that you were promoting at the time. So you played with your back to the audience. What's the thinking behind that? Do you want to just describe to our viewers what I mean by that? How you set up the stage show?
Well, it's kind of a conscious decision that we've made in order to be able to it's a conscious decision in the goal is in order to be able to create more of an atmosphere between the three members of the band that all face into each other, and sort of like we're lost in the music and we want you to get lost in our music as well. Like we're not like a classic rock band that'll get the crowd involved or like get you clapping along or anything like that. That's not our thing. And so like for us all to be facing inwards it almost kind of creates that atmosphere. Like I say, if you've got a lens into what we do and that exists in front of you, and the way that you join in on it is the fact that you're also facing into it. And so instead of like us facing you and forcing that interaction, like you've already become a part of the experience in the fact that you're on the same level as us. It sort of kind of removes that separation between the band and the stage, in my opinion, a little bit, but then also creates an environment where we are like more sort of in tune with each other.
Yeah,
more in sync with each other.
Yeah.
I think that's the main mentality behind it. And also just being kind of like really like basic about it, I guess. It really helps when we can actually see each other instead of having to sort of like turn around to see when, because there are lots of sections in our songs where we sort of play it like we can play some things a little bit longer, some things shorter, depends on where the feeling takes us. And so having that ability to like, you know, see each other and really be in tune with each other, helps us to sort of like almost just feel it a little bit more instead of like separating ourselves out from each other and performing our own parts. We become one unit, and it very much feels more like we're doing that when we're actually sort of like facing each other, and it just makes it easier to do that, basically.
Yeah, it's introverted music, isn't it, that you're writing? I understood it. When I saw it, I thought, oh, that makes sense. Because there is like an existential Kafkaesque element to post-metal, isn't there? Certainly to what you're writing, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So when I saw you with the Back to the Crowd, I thought, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And I interviewed that London post-metal band, Nelvia, 2 weeks ago. They're on Trepanation Recordings. They said the same thing. We're not here. We don't want to be showmen. We go, we experience the music. And they're not saying we don't care about the audience. They're saying it's such almost like a shared euphoria. Releasing all this rage that they're not interested, you know, in showing out for being extravagant or flamboyant. So completely understand that. So let's talk about the new EP then. It's 16 minutes in length. Many textures in this EP, very progressive. And I think listening to this, it reignites the debate. So I'm interested in your thoughts. Post-metal, to what extent is that a branch of avant-garde metal based on your new EP and what you're trying to do with it?
I definitely think it's a sort of a branch of avant-garde metal in the fact that, like, what we always try to do with every piece of music that we write is to sort of like push ourselves and explore different ways of writing music, whether it be sort of like in the texture of the sound, like trying to sort of like come up with different ways of structuring music and stuff.
Just like a vocal line or...
And I think it's that experimental nature that is naturally a part of post-metal that would make it quite similar to avant-garde metal in a lot of ways. It's just the I guess the way that you instigate those experimentations depends on what subgenre you decide to call it, essentially. It's kind of other people's opinion to decide on that. I personally, I think we both agree on the fact that like the only reason that we call ourselves post-metal is because we've got to call it something. And the subgenres and the labels that you put on them and everything like that, it doesn't necessarily, because there are some bands that you'd listen to and they say like, oh, they're doom metal, and I personally wouldn't agree. I'd think it was something different, or like somebody else might think it was something different for me, and I prefer not to sort of like pigeonhole things into sort of like those kinds of things. But I definitely think like the term avant-garde is a lot broader than a lot of people will probably think, because they probably cite specific bands as being avant-garde, but anything that has any kind of experimental nature in it, whether it be like in the metal, rock, jazz spectrum or anything like that, would be avant-garde, because it's sort of like, you know, taking yourselves outside of the pop mentality and doing something that is sort of like breaking boundaries, essentially. That's what I think, anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting, that, isn't it? It's only over the last 2 years. I mean, I'm 41 now, and I realized last night I was out walking to the supermarket and I was listening to another post-metal, and it's like, this seems to be the genre of metal that I've really talks to me more than anything, you know, where I am in life at the moment. And I always, because it's my job as a reviewer, isn't it? I've got to explain to the readers as well, you know, if you're unfamiliar with certain subgenres, where they come from. Doom metal, we know, comes from Black Sabbath. Sludge, I think the loose definition is a hardcore take on doom metal, isn't it? And I would say post-metal, obviously, Neurosis, I think we'll agree, is the first band. It's like Celtic Frost playing doom metal, isn't it? It's just, I think, and then they came from a hardcore background, so you've got the roaring vocals in there, and then violins on that 1992 album, Souls at Zero. And I never understood Neurosis when I was younger. I remember someone showing me Times of Grace, that 1998. I just thought, oh, this is just doom metal, this is boring. And then when I revisited it in my 30s, I remember thinking, this is fucking incredible music. I just didn't understand it at the time. So I always ask this question to post metal bands: why do you think this genre, you never see like a group of 19-year-old teenagers forming a post metal band, yet when they're 29 or 39 they might do it? Why do you think that is?
Well, for me, it's I'm too tired to be playing fast. Like, it's a good excuse to be able to play slow post metal, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you hit on more of a point that you think there, because like to me, post metal almost sort of has that sort of it's a release for a certain kind of emotion, and I think personally for me that emotion is just like the tiredness of like constantly being like in the grind, and like, you know,
it's
like,
a very emotive genre of music.
I think you have to be living through some shit.
And
really
and like you just said, like
it.
when you said 19 and stuff, obviously like everybody's going through stuff in their life, and it's all important to yourself. Like what you're going through is just as valid as what somebody else is going through. But yeah, I think maybe when you do get a bit older, it becomes a bit easier to sort of express yourself musically and stuff. I guess like I think when I was like when I was like 18, 19, I just wanted to, well, same like you, we just wanted to write cool Mastodon Baroness style like riffage with no real sort of what emotional impact can this music have.
Yeah. And
I suppose as you get a bit older and you realise things, you're like, yeah, this can actually be a real good release. Like, and we've said it before, like just getting in a room together, like on a regular basis, and just hanging out and playing music. Like you said, like as cheesy as it sounds, it's a bit like therapy.
Yeah,
like, it's good.
Totally
like,
me, like.
So yeah, maybe it's just sort of the genre, like I said, being a bit more emotive and having that experience when you're a bit more mature and a bit older.
Yeah, because I hear a lot of trauma in this music, but also fortitude, recognizing a midlife crisis, to use that cliche. And then you've got this cathartic release of rage, but textures and it's really introspective music, isn't it? And I think that's probably why it speaks to me where I am in life at the moment. You said there, Quig, the grind, you know, don't get me wrong, I love my day job. But at the same time, you know, you have to be conditioned by the clock, don't you? You start work at a certain time. You need to get on this train to come home. You need to make sure you're at the supermarket at this time. Repeat. The weekends give you a bit of respite from that. As artists, you've got an outlet for that, haven't you? Where you can actually just release all that, and that's healthy. Doing it that way. Can I ask a question about the EP? Why is this a self-release and not released via Trepanation Recordings like your debut album from last year?
I think
we've always had a bit of a DIY mentality with a lot of things. I recorded our previous album, and I recorded and mixed this one. So we kind of just felt it made sense. Like we're just like, we'll just
it's the first step on our journey to try and become more independent in that regard,
and more self-sufficient.
Yeah,
on a lot of levels and aspects.
It's like a lot like in the way that sort of like Neurosis has Neuro Recordings, how Cult of Luna has Red Creek, ISIS had Hydra Head,
Rosetta self-release, everything.
There's definitely a because of the fact that of the nature of the music that it is, and that it is quite a niche genre. It's not like commercial in any regard. It tends to be able to flourish a hell of a lot more when the artists themselves are more like in control of how and when it gets released. And I think this is the first step in us taking that into consideration and trying to do that a lot more. But then also, We haven't necessarily released the EP for any other reason than the fact that it's music that we wanted to release.
Yeah.
Like, it's stuff that we didn't necessarily feel fits on the album because it has a very different atmosphere to it. It expanded since then. We added new things, experimented with new things and everything, and we just wanted the world to hear it. So instead of going through the process of sending it off to labels for them to listen to it, to then turn around and tell us whether or not they wanted to release it, we just put it on Bandcamp and let you just release it into the world. We've definitely felt that, obviously, with you having quite a good relationship with For the Lost, going in that direction and getting good PR has helped us out a hell of a lot in order to be able to start considering maybe we could actually do this ourselves, maybe we could do this independently, and be in control of our own releases.
Simon from For the Lost, he really does have the UK doom, sludge, post metal, all the great bands, doesn't he? But also, bands like Ken Mode as well, that great Canadian noise rock band, and Paradise Lost, for God's sake, the ultimate Yorkshire metal band, the legends, along with My Dying Bride. Am I right in thinking? Do you know your previous band? Was it Archelon?
Archelon.
Yeah, Frenchie.
Yeah,
that's the guy that runs. He runs a PR company now, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I didn't know if he still ran it.
Yeah, because he's just done PR for Topo.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. Yeah. Because he's a sound guy. I think he played on that. Did you hear that album Catafalque? With the I think Frenchie plays on that with Dan Dolby, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Fucking hell, that's an extreme album.
They were on a Doom Lines recently. It was quite nice to see Frenchie with them. Yeah. To be honest with you. Cool.
You've definitely got a scene going there. Like Trepanation, you know those people anyway, don't you? Dan. And, are you saying you're not going to release another album through them?
No, we don't know yet.
We haven't crossed that bridge yet. We need to see where we are in life and like what we want to do.
We need to get the other album finished.
Yeah, we need to focus on the music first.
Yeah,
definitely. But we'll just see where it takes us. See where we are at that particular time. It might work for us. It might not. But like we prefer not to
write anything in stone.
Yeah. Because a lot changes. Situations can change. Opinions change. People change. We just take it as it comes, basically.
Yeah.
So this EP, am I right in thinking, is a meditation on the aftermath of death?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's.
What inspired that concept then to explore that?
To be honest, my fear with death, I think there's that notion again in metal that it's like, with metal, I don't care if I die and all this lot and like that sort of thing. But I used to anyway have a bit of a genuine. It used to terrify me, like what would come next, like not knowing and stuff. And I think it was just writing some of this music was sort of a good way for me to just kind of process some of that and just be a bit like, well, whatever does happen next, it's more important what I leave behind as a person than anything. And it was just kind of me processing a bit of that.
And I think it's also a lot to do with the fact that, like, having a lot of thoughts about that is the experiences of death that have happened recently, like in our lives. Like, we've lost friends, and I lost some family fairly recently. There's been health issues throughout, like, that have made people afraid of death and stuff like that. And it's just much in line with the fact that we use music in order to be able to process going through those kinds of things. That EP is the story of us processing our relationship with death.
Yeah, it really is a remarkable 16 minutes. And what really stood out for me, there's quite a lot of synthesizers in this as well. I've been on, for the last 6 months, I've just been listening to Depeche Mode constantly. I go through stages where I'm obsessed with that band. And I've got a Violator t-shirt on now, so I'm still in that phase.
Oh, that's what I saw, yeah.
Yeah. And before we come on to track number 3, which really has some of that in it, can I just talk about track number 2, Celestial River?
Yeah.
What have you sampled? There seems to be some kind of like soprano female gasp of breath that's looped in this song. What is that? Or is that like some kind of pan flute that you've sampled?
I'm not entirely
I'm going to say I'm not.
Listen to your own song. I hear, I've listened to it with headphones, and it's just like gasp. It's like almost melodic. It sounds like a female voice going like that, but with melody.
That might be some synth again.
Okay.
There'll be some synth.
Yeah.
There is a lot, like, it's quite interesting the way that you describe it that way, because there are definitely things in there that could be described that way, but I'm not sure what it would be, because there's a lot going on in there that's sort of like subtext and kind of underneath everything for you to kind of...
Because in that song there is synth sort of throughout it, but there's some sections where it is very much more like buried a little bit more in the mix, so it's probably a bit of that coming through.
Is it when it's sort of like you go through the first passage of like the heavy part and then it drops back quiet, and then that gasp kind of sound, it almost sounds like a hissing.
Yeah, but it's got melody. It sounds like almost, there's like a tragic beauty to it.
Yeah.
Anxiety.
Now, and I can't remember what it is.
It'll be synth.
It's synth.
Yeah. So you've not sampled that then? Is that? I mean, you just found that on the synthesizer and
we will. We'll have messed about with.
Seeing what comes out, man. Like that's the fun part about synthesizers. You can just sit with you and just go for a bit, and then eventually you'll stumble across something cool.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting for me to hear the original masters of that. It's like when you hear that Smashing Pumpkins song, 1979. You know that delay at the end of the riff.
Yeah.
Finally, I was watching Rick Beato on YouTube, and he broke down the song. And now he's isolated that from the other tracks. It's actually a vocal loop.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that, because I thought, is that some kind of delay effect on it? So it'd be interesting how I interpret that song, if I was to hear that in isolation. But you did mention that. I love that part. You've got the great dynamic uplift where it goes heavy. When I say uplift, I mean it's like quite traumatic, isn't it? And then the come down, and then it rebuilds again. Track number 3 though, Gone Away. I love this song. My observation, it's like The Cure in the 17 Seconds era, the early 80s era, interpreting a John Carpenter soundtrack.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
I like The Cure, and I love me some John Carpenter, so like that's I'll take that.
Yeah.
How likely are we to hear more type of this like weird Tangerine Dream dark metal? I mean, there's not really much guitars, but it's so dark.
We've got some sections that we've been working on.
Yeah,
or a bit like that.
I think a lot of what we did with the EP was an opportunity to sort of like mess around and sort of like not really just experiment with it.
Yeah.
And I think those experimentations, what we've learned from that, will find its way into all of our future music, never mind just the next record, is because everything that we do is we're learning. Is constantly a learning process.
Yeah.
And how to do new things, how to do them better, what walls you can break down, what walls you shouldn't break down, what works, what doesn't work.
We kind of approached that track very different though as well.
Yeah.
I remember. Because we kind of like, we did, me and Craig did loads of parts just kind of like in our band space and kind of just, and then I kind of took them away, didn't I? I kind of like restructured stuff, and then Craig had the like vocal line for the end.
Yeah.
And then I added some like effects to it and stuff. So we kind of, that track was very different. That it wasn't, we didn't kind of write it as a band or as this is the structure.
Yeah.
It was kind of like these are the parts, and then
it was more produced.
Yeah, we kind of we figured out how it like went together very naturally.
Yeah.
With that one, without overthinking it really.
Mm.
It came together really quick, that track.
Mm.
But I think it's just because we practiced not overthinking, and we were kind of just like, right, what feels right? Yeah, this is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, move on.
Because we were really bad for that.
Yeah,
when we were Archelon, especially in the very early
days
of Archelon,
and it was just
thinking everything.
It was just a case of just like a practicing, like I said, not overthinking, and kind of just creating that like atmospheres and those textures, and yeah.
Who does vocals on that? Because there's that repeat of "Gone Away" in the background. Who's doing that?
Oh, it's both of us.
Yeah, so it's kind of like layered. There's a couple of layers of each of our vocals. So yeah, we were again experimenting with like doing different vocal techniques, because like a lot of our music is always just like big, screechy, growly, guttural vocals and everything. It was nice to do something that was a little bit softer and sort of see what we could do with something like that, more kind of repetitive, like almost like make it like a mantra, bit of a like respite from all of the noise, which is something that I've always kind of like wanted to do, but it never really came off before in the way that we'd like it to. But then we were very proud of that, and it was sort of like the thing that we've been trying to do with that kind of thing for a while that never really came off. We finally actually managed to figure out our way around it, and so that's why it's out there, because it's sort of like we learned something, it was a success, and so therefore it's released. Like that's the way that I think about a lot of our stuff anyway.
Yeah, track number 4, you actually expand on this, don't you? There are some quite almost technical vocal harmonies, aren't there, at the beginning of Where the River Meets the Ocean. It's quite naked, the intro to that, isn't it? You've got this finger picking guitar, and then are you both?
It was definitely. So I'd for a while been trying to get TJ to do more vocals, and he went away. He came back to me one day and he was like, I've written this track, because TJ, pretty much that whole last track was written almost in its entirety by TJ. The only thing that I really did was help to sort of like produce the last elements of it, put some guitars over it, and then we sort of like worked on a little bit of like, just refining it, making it so that we could play live and everything like that. But the 90% of the work I would say was done by TJ on that track. And it was, I was really happy with that, because I would very much like to see TJ do a lot more vocals. And that was, you wrote all the lyrics and you did the vocals and that part, and you managed to get a lot of stuff that you were feeling out on that part and everything, and I really liked that. So I'm really glad that track made it on the album. Also, it's a very fun track to play, since we've sorted out like having backing tracks to it and stuff like that. Because there's so much going on that like obviously 3 people can't do. It's something that we did on the Tour We Talk, or is like experimented with using backing tracks in our live set, and use that track as an example. And that was again a really good opportunity for us to learn and grow and sort of experiment with the way that we not only approach our recorded music, but approach our live music as well. So it was a very interesting process.
Yeah, you're right there. What you say, it's when you listen to this EP, there are a lot of layers in this, aren't there? It's a pleasure to really just put the headphones on, and on the 5th or 6th listen, still be discovering new things. What stands out for me is that laser gun synth effect, when the like murderous aggression comes. I love that. When I first heard it, I actually smiled. I don't know if that was the intended effect. I just thought
it might have been a bit too loud in the mix, but yeah, I went a bit overboard, didn't I, with like all the beat boops on that song. But I do really like that last track. I'm really pleased with like just myself just like trying to challenge myself to write a full song, and not just like relying on Craig helping me out or whatever. Like, yeah, it was nice to be able to kind of like dig in and kind of go, oh, I can, as a drummer, I can actually do some stuff. Like, yeah, so But yeah, getting that synth and just hitting all the buttons, it was fun. So
I can imagine you putting that in, thinking mischievously, probably going a bit overboard here, but let's leave it in. And it's great. I love that feature
I appreciate that.
of the
I
song.
think it's great as well. Coming from a somewhat semi-outside perspective, I love that part as well. So,
Yeah.
I can see why the backing track would be needed for that. One other thing about this song, when you hear the later Gozer albums, they seem to be trying to do what you've done on this song. I don't think they've been very successful. Whereas this, if you were to show this to Joe DePlanty, you might be like, "Oh, okay, this is what I've been trying to do." I don't want to flatter you here, but when I heard that, I just thought they need to be listening to this. If they want to go in this direction, this is what they've been aiming to do. But yeah, who's actually doing the vocals for the murderous aggression part?
that's me.
Yeah.
I like to think that I give off murderous
It's probably a good thing you've got your back to the audience when you're doing that.
It's like, this guy's a real psychopath. Yeah.
So I've just got 2 more questions in this interview. I know that you're a 3-piece. In what circumstances might the band possibly expand beyond a 3-piece in the future?
Well, like, I'd be lying if we said that we didn't necessarily, that we haven't put any thought into it, and doing like a bunch of stuff, especially like we quite like having people collaborate on projects. Like, with Endless Static, we had Simon Mason do some vocals for us.
We had Tom from 100-Year-Old Man do some synth and French horn,
Obviously, we've already discussed Rich from Bile doing viola for us and stuff like that.
I think it's one of them things that as our music gets more sort of dense and layered, we're definitely becoming more and more open to bringing other people into the fold to sort of help that live, especially as well. Because it's one thing playing to backing tracks, but if you can get people to fill in those elements live as well, and also vibing with us and kind of it gives us that freedom that we don't have to play certain sections to a click and it has to be this long before we change. It's like, because like we said earlier, there's some sections where we really vibe on it and we want to play it a little bit longer. So it would be nice to have a second, a third guitar player,
and have that
somebody playing percussion. We're very open to more people coming into the fold.
The one thing that we do struggle with is the fact that Sheffield, it's not that big a city in terms of its music scene. There's not really that many musicians.
And the musicians we do know, they're already in 2, 3, 4 other bands. So it's
just quite difficult to actually find people. Like most people that we've spoken to in the past, I think probably most of the members of our band besides us and Kieran haven't lived in Sheffield. And either moved away or moved here from other cities or something like that, and it just so happens to have kind of worked out that way. But so as much as we are open to that expansion, we're also limited by the ability to actually get those members in the band and stuff. But I suppose the good thing about the way that we operate as a band is the fact that we do kind of just leave things to work themselves out almost, and we don't want to rush anything, we don't want to force anything. So if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You obviously have to put effort in order to be able to make that kind of thing happen. But we're not going to go, we really want a guitarist, so we'll take any guitarist kind of thing, because we've done that before and it didn't work for us. We really have to gel with them as people first before musicians, because I don't think you could write this kind of music without being on the same page. Especially in terms of the fact that we essentially we put our heart and soul and our deepest, darkest fears and our we get it out in our music. And if you don't want it for that same cathartic nature, then the music won't be served almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's obviously not. There's not a performance or element, to like for example, when you hear John Zorn and Naked City and Mr. Bungle and stuff like that, that's radically different, isn't it?
Mm.
With you, we were talking about on stage, yeah, that you've got to be in that zone, haven't you? You can't just do it with apathy. If you're playing in your band, you won't be able to do it. It's like Napalm Death. Barney says, attack. That's the one thing they ask when they're playing live, and they still do it. And you watch them live, and it's terrifying. That's the whole point. So, yeah, no, that does make sense. Please keep the French horn in there. I love Celtic Frost, so whenever I hear a French horn in that, I'm like, yes, this is my type of music.
Oh, I love my brass. I love trumpets and big grandiose, like, I love Celtic Frost as well, like, and I absolutely love those sections of Celtic Frost where it's just basically, it's essentially questing music, and there's just something about it that just like really gets you going. I love that kind of thing, but in a very different way for us. Like, I don't think we'll never lose that experimental element, but it just shows itself in different forms, and sometimes it's French horn, sometimes it's something else.
Yeah.
You never know. We might do bagpipes. That might be too gross instead.
Oh yeah, Times of Grace. They did it on that.
Okay, fair enough.
So final question then. I think we've already talked about it implicitly. We're in November 2023 now at the time of this interview. What are you hoping to achieve in 2024 with Gozer?
Definitely playing some bigger stages.
Yeah.
Like,
get into being a lot more conscientious about the kind of gigs that we play, and being able to basically take a step up in that regard.
Yeah.
And then just to continue experimenting with sound, continuing to experiment with our live show.
Hopefully we'll have our second album done next year. Whether it's released next year, but at least have it finished and
ready to be
sort of gestate on it a little bit. And just kind of push the music forward as well, for sure.
Good. Yeah. Will a lot of it depend on the backlog with Magnus Lindberg with his mastering services?
To be fair, it's been really good.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. It's really nice to know that somebody's mastering the music that actually gets the sound. You could go to anybody. We've had it done. We've had things been done by other people before,
and we've been happy with them.
But there's just something about what Magnus does that really, I don't know. He's very good at sort of making it seem like he hasn't actually done anything. It comes out sounding pretty much exactly the same as it did in the mix, just everything's clearer and crisper. None of the sound itself is actually touched. I think he has a lot of respect in that regard, and I like that style of mastering engineering, instead of going I wish this had more bass, so I'm going to put more bass in it, or I don't know, messing with the dynamics too much and sort of making it so that everything's just completely flat all the way through. He really understands, because knowing Cult of Luna as a band, knowing their sound, they're extremely dynamic and sonically very big, but also delicate. And I think coming from that background and then giving him our music, it's just a match made in heaven. And I can't see us really needing to go anywhere else unless
he says no.
Unless he says no. That's down to him, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm sure that that day will not come. He definitely will understand your music. So thanks very much for joining us on the A.D.K Rock and Metal channel. For our viewers, I would actually say start with the 2022 debut album, An Endless Static, and go and buy it on CD or cassette. And this is a digital only release at the moment, isn't it?
We might potentially do physicals, but we're not.
There's no rush, is there, for that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be. I understand. Yeah. So that's called The Path Always Leads to the End. 16 minutes. So many textures. The ultimate cliche. It is a journey. It is. That's. I know we don't like saying that as music reviewers, but this really is a journey. My only criticism, you just want it to be. I just want another 16 minutes once I've listened to it. So yeah.
That's what we wanted.
Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it, TJ.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks, great.